LaxFactor podcast. What is up, guys? Just kind of snuck up on me here this morning. I'm making sure I have audio, checking the comments. We're up to just 2 viewers so far, so I'll ramble through some things before we get into it completely. But today, the stuff we are going to talk about, and I actually have to bring my notes up because I wasn't logged in apparently, is we're going to talk about the 3 ACC games that went on this week. We had UNC picking up a win. We had Duke absolutely destroying High Point. And then we had Syracuse, handle Stony Brook at home fairly well. Stony Brook, I thought, put on a pretty good show considering, and just Fopp reemerging for Syracuse kind of made the big difference there. And Porter's continued to play well here after having a rough go in their first game. Let me get my notes up here. That is the problem I'm having. I labeled this one LaxFactor Live 007, and it's actually 008. So as people start to file in here, you feel free to ask questions. We'll kind of go through and we'll talk about what's happened so far this week, because we had a bunch of games earlier in the week, all high-profile ACC teams playing, and then we have games coming up this weekend, and we're obviously going to talk about those. The games that we're going to talk about that have already happened, we'll talk about Syracuse dropping Stony Brook. We're going to talk about Colin Krieg holding on long enough for UNC to beat UVA, because the truth is, the story of that game was Colin Krieg standing on his head for UNC, and then how Duke just absolutely put it on High Point, and what that means for the rest of the teams in the ACC. Because I will tell you what, Duke looked really good offensively in that one. Before I get into it, as always, we got a big Maryland matchup today, so I'd be remiss if I didn't try to plug myself as we were waiting for more people to file in so we can talk about the Cuse game. So if you want to support what we're doing here, whether it be these live streams or just the 2 regular shows that we put out and the other stuff, I was supposed to put a video out Friday and totally forgot. My whole household was sick. But you can go to laxfactor.com. We've got regular t-shirts here. We've got these sick Maryland flag shorts, and we're about to print our own signature LaxFactor shorts here that we're going to start putting out. What we'll do is we'll start putting out a pair of shorts every 4 months or so, for people who dig them. And, some batches people will like and buy, others they won't. So we'll kind of try to keep putting things out. And we also have brandable crap. You can get LaxFactor podcast t-shirts on top of that. So let's get into it. Let's see what we have here for questions so far. We got Murray Ron, greetings from sunny Swansea, Wales. Looking forward to today's show. Did I get that spelling or pronunciation right here? I'm really bad at speaking the UK brand of English for the most part. My mother-in-law is a British Canadian, I guess is what you would kind of call her, but she's barely Canadian because she was from Niagara Falls, Canada. So us people in New York, we kind of call them fake Canadians because they're not really Canadians, because they're way too close to the American border to truly be considered Canadians. But I always thought it was funny because I hear stories about how my wife's grandmother used to talk about if the grandkids did things wrong, she would say, "You are not fit for the queen." And now us Americans, as I saw a meme the other day, we stopped caring about the Queen's affairs or the monarchy's affairs since 1776, which is a really lame joke, but still funny nonetheless. So we have enough people in here now, so let's get into it and let's start talking about lacrosse. I'll talk about the games from this week backwards. We're going to talk about the most recent, which was Syracuse dropping Stony Brook last night. I got a little bit into the beer day drinking here. I was working. As soon as that Cuse game came on, I got myself an ice cold beer and watched the game in my monitor here as I kind of did some work over there, and then it turned into a 6-pack before the night was over. That's a party for me putting down a 6-pack. The Syracuse attack in this game continued to look good, with Hiltz headlining this one. He goes for 4 goals and a helper. Rafis has continued to be aggressive and assert himself on the attack. 3 goals, 1 assist, and Scanlon was 2 and 2, all playing big roles in the victory. Scanlon less so, but Scanlon answered when Syracuse needed a couple of goals, and he fed a couple as well, so he looked good. That Cuse attack, after that Army game, I was sitting here like, oh, crap, this attack is not going to be good enough to hang in the ACC, and it didn't matter how good our goalie was or how capable we thought our defense could be as they gelled a little bit, and more importantly, that midfield. It didn't matter how good they were going to be. If our attackmen continued to look as bad against Army, or as bad against everyone else as they did against Army, it was going to spell trouble for Syracuse. But then right off the bat, they bounced back, and they've played well in every game since. So it continued against Stony Brook. Rafus, he's been the most pleasant surprise because he's now third in the ACC overall in points. And I said it early in the year, he was going to need to play tough all season for Syracuse to really have a shot at winning the ACC. And now he's doing that in a big way. He's putting up helpers. He's scoring goals. In this game, he kind of flips the script a little bit and scores goals instead of going nuts feeding. Hiltz has also been huge as he's gotten more comfortable over the last 3 games really. Number 77, 12 goals and 5 helpers so far over the first 4 games for Syracuse. So he's going to be huge as we get through into the season. Just kid has a knack for scoring. And it's not even just he has a knack for scoring. Hiltz, he seems to just be that guy that whether it's on a clear and they're riding, he just happens to be in the right time or right place at the right time. There was a ground ball early in the game where Cuse gave up the ball, and then it was kind of a scrap on the ground, and Hiltz just ends up being right there to pick it up. I mean, the guy just knows what he has. His field awareness, his field IQ is off the charts, and then just his finishing capability. Quick release, as Kark said in the game, very little wasted movement in his shot as you go through. So Hiltz has played great for him. Their midfield continue to do their thing. Curry, what I liked in this game was in the UVA game where they roached UVA, Curry and Siebold primarily were dodging from X, trying to kind of anchor their midfields and get looks for the midfield units. And then the next game, they kind of went back in the win over Vermont. They kind of went back to everything out top for the midfielders. And then in this game was the first game where we saw a mix of both. We saw Cuse early on in this game, even with Curry dodging a lot from out top from the corners. And then towards the second half, as Syracuse started to falter a little bit offensively, they say, hey, we need something going. Let's put Curry at X. And then he went through and dished the rock a little bit from X, because I like seeing him mix that up overall. But Curry, in the end, what'd he go for points here? I'm having a hard time seeing my screen. I didn't put Curry's in here. I think he ended up like 3-2 or some crap like that. He had a good game. Dordovic 3 goals. Trimboli 1-1. They continued to just play as tough as they need to. What's been good for Syracuse and not necessarily good for the midfielders, that first midline stat line, is that we haven't had to rely on them in the last couple of games. That attack has played so well that the midfielders have just been able to get in and do their thing, draw slides, and then bump the ball, knowing that if they draw ahead, they bump the ball down to the attack or they bang it back out top to another mid. They're not going to get the assist or the point, but someone down the line is going to benefit and someone down the line is going to finish after they draw that slide. So taking the pressure off that first midfield for Syracuse is going to prove huge for them. Fop got back to his winning ways. The Cuse face-off men got absolutely murdered by Vermont. We'll talk about the Vermont kid here in a little bit, but Fop gets back to his winning ways. He goes 16-25 over the course of the day, and I know there was a point where Stony Brook started to kind of harass Cuse back, and Fop, I think, went 11-15 over that stretch. So Fop streaked at the right time and ends up with 16-25 over the course of the game, which is good enough. And then they had a couple other guys. Varello took a couple. I don't think Varello fared as well in this game as he has in previous games, but that two-headed monster, it doesn't look like we have the face-off crew that Notre Dame has in Leonard and Gallagher, but it's good to know that we have a two-headed monster at the face-off dot, at least, that if one guy isn't going to perform in that game, we can throw Varello in or vice versa, or if worse, one guy gets COVID or injured, we have someone to lean on that has a lot of experience there, so that'll be big. I say we always when I talk about Syracuse because obviously I'm a part of the team. That's just how it goes. And Porter was huge. Fop was huge in this, just trying to get back to their winning ways at the face-off dot, but Porter ended up being pretty badly needed because the defense played well. They didn't give up a lot of shots, but they ended up giving up quite a few quality shots, especially early in this game, and Porter's 11 saves versus the 16 shots that he faced, they were needed because, you end up winning this game by a handful of goals. Porter, those saves that he made are that margin in the end. So that ends up being key. So a good game out of Cuse. I think that margin was okay. Stony Brook is a solid team. They will still threaten to be at the top there of the America East. They could even still win the America East. They've played a really tough non-conference schedule. So I think they're now, especially with the Cuse game under their belt, they're a little bit more tested than Albany is so far. But I digress. So Cuse gets a good win. The next one I want to talk about is UNC and UVA. Now, a lot of people are like, you see UNC jump out to this enormous lead, and you're like, well, UNC just put it on UVA. That wasn't the case. What ended up happening in this game, if you really watched it closely, was UVA played a pretty solid game. The difference was Krieg in cage. UVA early on missed a lot of shots. UVA has always been a high volume team in terms of they take a lot of shots, but as part of that, they end up not always taking the best shots. They're just going to try to drive fast, take a lot of chances, and they do that, and the result is you miss a lot of shots just wide, but you usually get the backups and you live to fight another day. In this game, that happened. They didn't hit the cage as much as they should have, especially in that first quarter. Sailed a ton of shots, but where they put their shots on cage, Krieg handled his business. The kid ends up with 20 saves on the day, and every single one of them was needed as UVA, especially in that second half, started to chip back into that game. Krieg just stood on his head. Now, obviously, over the course of the fourth quarter, as UVA kind of started putting goals on and got back to within, two? I think they got it back to within 2 goals before UNC scored a third to seal it. The kicker with that was that, he gave up a lot of goals over the course of that fourth, or gave up more goals over the course of the second half. But if he didn't save those goals early in that game, those were goals that, the UVA wouldn't have had to make up. So Krieg, I can't say enough good things about this freshman. He's been solid. He's been in the area 50%, getting thrown to the wolves here and playing a decent schedule that UNC's faced so far. But if he just has an average game in this game, UVA wins this game by a margin possibly. Krieg, normally he would, in a game like this, facing as many shots as he did, his save percentage is in the area of 50, I think. So, I mean, if he only saves half of the shots that were on cage, UVA wins this game by 2 or 3 goals. But that ended up not being the case, and the kid saved UNC. And championship caliber teams, one of the things you want to see out of a championship caliber team is, do you have guys on your roster that can win you a game when another unit isn't holding up their end? I'd make the argument that either the UNC defense didn't hold up their end, but I wouldn't say that. I think that Bowen played really good against Matt Moore. I think that what happens is when you're playing a team like UVA, though, they're capable of beating anybody on any given day. And when you have a kid like Krieg in the cage who, when his number's called, if he can win you that game, which I think he did for UNC here, that's what you're looking for. Championship caliber teams have goalies, they have face-off guys, they have defenders, offensive players that can win games for you when everybody else isn't playing at their best, or just when your back is up against the wall because you're playing tough competition, UVA. And I mean, that's huge. To get a win like that and to be able to say, I don't know what UNC did in their locker room, but I'm guessing they gave Krieg the game ball after this one. If they didn't, someone should be punched in the face. Krieg, a hell of a job by that kid. Another thing that's a little bit scary for the rest of the teams in the ACC, Solomon. I don't know how many people saw it and noticed it, but there was a goal where Solomon comes up the right side for North Carolina. He sticks a running jump shot as he's coming up the right side, and if you didn't see his number, you would have thought it was Gray. So to have Chris Gray and some of the ridiculous things that he does offensively, a lot of succeeding offensively is just a matter of having the balls to try the things that you try in the backyard on the field. And then if they go well, you get to keep trying those things. Your confidence goes up. So every player in the country just about is capable of sticking a BTB, a backhand, these jump shots. It's just that they don't take them. They don't have the confidence in either, their ability to do it in the game, or maybe they fear of their coach, fear of their teammates, whatever. But to see Solomon stick that goal going up the right side where it's just that quick release, the goalie's not ready for it. You don't have the angle yet. The defender's in good position, but you still get your hands free and just sling that jump shot off that defender's head. All of a sudden, a ball is flying off that defender's ear, or it's flying in the goalie's perspective. He's looking at it. He sees his defender's head, and all of a sudden, a ball is flying off the side of it right at his own head. So that's scary for the ACC, because if Solomon and some of these other guys start playing with the swag that Gray has so far, offensively at least for UNC, that's going to be huge. Gray 4-1, Cook 2-2, Perry 2-2, Kelly 1-1. UNC, you just go all the way down. And I mean, I didn't mention Anderson, and he was on there as well. You just go down that roster, and UNC is scary offensively. Step down shooters galore. It is literally one of the best offensive teams I think that we've ever seen. And we've got Duke and Virginia, and those guys are right up there as well. I think it's Duke and UNC at the top right now, with UNC with a slight edge until they face each other and they see what they do. But offensively, UNC is scary. For UVA, Schellenberger continues to impress. He was 2-3, and he's carrying the ball more. They move Laviano up to midfield, which I don't like. I love Ian Laviano. He's a spark plug for that team on both in the riding game and offensively. Nobody celebrates goals as happily as Laviano does. He's like that annoying little brother that just wants to get up all in your shit all the time, but I love it out of him. You just that kind of energy goes a long way for team camaraderie. But Schellenberger has looked incredible carrying the ball. Matt Moore has gotten taken out of games a little bit. In the Syracuse game, he got totally taken out of it. And they just played incredible defense against him. And then Porter robbed him when he had to. In this game, Will Bowen did an incredible job against him, especially early. So if Moore can't carry the rock and get things created for himself, then you need somebody else down there on the attack. And Laviano's not going to do it. Cormier, big bruising attackman, might not be able to be the guy to carry, really. So they need Schellenberger, and he has delivered 2-3 in this game. That's big for him. Moore goes 2-2, though, overall. Bowen did a good job against him, but Moore, kind of desperation time as UVA got down. Moore ended up answering the bell, so that's good to see for him. Cormier, 3 goals, not bad. Something that is making me sad so far, and I'm sure it's making you guys a little bit sad too, no Dox Aitken still. Aitken has been absolutely anemic. 1 assist in this game off just 3 shots. He has not gelled and figured it out yet. But he could. I remember, stupid anecdote here. I played basketball in high school. In my sophomore year, I was, our team's leading scorer on JV. And then that summer between my sophomore year playing basketball and my junior year, ideally I end up being the 6th or 7th man off the bench that year, but I don't play any summer ball. I end up going hard into lacrosse that summer. I play no summer basketball. I'm not with my teammates. I'm not going out to the courts and playing every day like I did through my early career and everything like that. So the amount that I lost on my handle and my shot just in one summer of not playing basketball after playing basketball every year of my life leading up to it from 6th grade on, I end up falling off and not being that 7th man and dropping to like 8th on the depth chart and not really playing all that well. And at some point I got it back before we had other problems, but I think that taking time off hurts badly. There's nothing you can do about it. Taking time off is going to hurt you, and I think that that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a team that's kind of gelled together. Aitken wasn't with them in the fall, joins them late in the spring, so maybe that's what it is. But if he starts figuring it out and starts getting comfortable again, you just gained an All-American caliber midfielder, so that's crazy. And luckily for UVA, they have enough depth that they've been able to get around that so far, but I think that hurts them. I think they expected at this point for Aitken to be in the area 12, 15 points or something like that, and that it's the opposite of that has actually happened. So before we talk about Duke rolling High Point, and then we're going to talk about Rutgers and Maryland's matchup today, let's get to the questions here. We've got Murray Ron from Wales here. As the season nears the end, would you consider a show giving us your picks for NCAA teams, USA, Canada, and Iroquois based on positional performance? That's a lot of work. I don't cover a lot of pro, especially during the college season, pretty much at all, just because I have to devote all my time to knowing my shit for this. And then when you get into the world teams, I have no idea who's going to make these teams and all that crap. I do know the U.S. is going to win. They're going to win. The Iroquois are going to come in third. And then Canada and the U.S. are going to do battle. The Iroquois are going to do battle in the area of third and maybe beat up and bruise a lot of guys on the U.S. and Canadian teams. But figuring out positional performance and things like that, we'll have to wait till we get there and college lacrosse season is over before I can even consider that. Shanks, who do you think will hand Duke or UNC their first loss? It could either be Duke or UNC. I think that Syracuse is capable of handing those teams a loss. I think Syracuse is going to match up really well with Duke. And I don't know about UNC. My worry with UNC is they do a lot of off-ball stuff, but Duke has been early as well. I don't know. I think that whoever beats them is obviously going to be another ACC team. I think that you're going to end up seeing the rest of the ACC, for the most part, go undefeated in their non-conference schedules. Maybe Cuse will end up being the only one that loses a non-conference game. Notre Dame, I think, still has some non-conference games to play, as does Syracuse. But it's tough to say. Virginia could come back and beat North Carolina the next time they see each other. It's one of those things where it's pick 'em. I think that UNC and Duke are going to really end up being at the top come the end of the season in the ACC overall, but I don't think anyone is going undefeated in the ACC. So it's almost pick 'em. I think Notre Dame could end up beating both UNC and Duke for all we know. Notre Dame wins face-offs. Notre Dame plays defense. Notre Dame's goalie is okay. Offensively, they can hang with the best of them. I don't know if they can outscore those teams in a dogfight, but if they can hold some of those teams back, they're right in the hunt. So I think that if I had to make a prediction, just because I'm an idiot homer, I'm saying Syracuse is going to give Notre Dame, UNC and Duke losses this year, but it's hard to say, and anyone could actually end up doing it. Let's see here. Man, we got a lot of questions. We're rolling already. 30 viewers here. Wyatt raised by wolves. Good to see you again here, pal. You've been here in almost every one of these. Love to see Rafis putting up numbers. I agree with you. I'm happy for Stephen Rafis, especially after all the weirdness with the transfer crap and the COVID crap that they had. It is good to see Rafis tearing it up here. Jesse Bruning, Albany and Vermont looks like a great matchup. It does, and I'm actually going to talk about that one in detail after I talk about the Maryland game, I think. I can't remember. IL schedule looks messed up. Is Air Force playing Bobby Moe or the Utes today? I believe they're playing. I don't know. I actually had that on here, and I have it open to talk about it quick, but I'm not sure. There has been some schedule weirdness, partly because it's shuffling. I don't know. Shanks, at whatever, agreed, though it would be nice to see Jacksonville give Duke an upset today, but I doubt that'll happen. Yeah, that's not happening. Definitely not happening. Wyatt raised by wolves. What do you make of Scanlon at this point? All right, let's talk about this one. I know a lot of people have been talking about Scanlon. A lot of people have been chirping Scanlon, saying he doesn't deserve to wear the number 22. I'd posit that's not the case here. The 22, the way it used to be doled out, it was given to a freshman, and then that freshman just had to perform or not perform with it. Syracuse was lucky early on when there was way less parity in lacrosse, and you knew your top recruits were going to be a sure thing. I mean, think about it. I think the way it went, Gary Gate just wanted it, so he grabs it his sophomore year. Charlie Lockwood didn't want it, and he was, from what I understand, it was kind of forced on him to a small degree. And then it goes to Casey Powell, Ryan Powell, Mike Powell. They were all guaranteed to be huge. Mike Powell, from the day he stepped on campus, was their best player in the country at that point. And then after Powell was when it fell off, because not because Syracuse still got really good recruits, and they still won a couple national championships post Mike Powell. They won actually 2 of them with the next 22. Hardy, that wore it. He won 2 national championships wearing number 22. So it's just one of those things where it went from being you gave it to the freshman that was a sure thing to freshmen no longer being sure things. Jordan Evans was the best player in the country coming out of high school, had a good career. I mean, in terms of if you're going to play D1 lacrosse, very few people are going to be upset with the career that Jordan Evans ended up having. It ended up being a solid midfielder. Jojo Marasco, same thing. He didn't pan out. He ended up not being the cat that you thought he was going to be, but he had a great career. You know, by their senior years, both of them were leaders on the team, top 2 or 3 in terms of scoring for the teams. So it's changed. Now you give it to Scanlon, who had a great year at Loyola, but you're asking him to change his position. He goes from playing midfield at Loyola, where he was an All-American as a freshman, I think he was tied for top in the country for goals per game, and then you move him down to attack, where it's a totally different dynamic, totally different dodging dynamic, totally different playing dynamic. So it's like, am I upset that he's not tearing it up more? Yeah. Only because I think you'd like to see number 22 trashing on people. But is he a key component in this team? And do we need him to play well to win? Do we need him to be our leading scorer to win? No. Do we need him to play well to win? Probably. But I don't think he's going anywhere. I mean, he fits on that attack. We've got Rafis carrying the ball well now. Hiltz is capable of dodging, and I think that you saw them kind of try to set that up a little bit more in the game against Stony Brook yesterday. So it stinks that he's not dropping 50, 60, 70 points, but he's still a key cog in this wheel, and he's still got 2 more years of eligibility after this to help lead the team. So I'm not that upset. I think he'll be fine. Let's see here. Whatever, I doubt it too, but that would be Okay, Mike Gallipo tried sending an email, but how do we compare the elite of the Big Ten with the elite of the ACC with 0 common data points? Michael, it's good to see you. I did get your email. I don't know if I got that question in your email, but I know we conversed during the week here. So if you're talking about Maryland and Rutgers, for certain, Maryland and Rutgers can hang with anybody in the ACC. You put Maryland against Duke or North Carolina, I bet you it's a 50-50 split in terms of who comes away with wins. You could make the argument maybe Duke and North Carolina are a little bit better, so maybe it's a Duke and North Carolina would win 6 of those games and Maryland only wins 4. Rutgers is in that. We'll see how Rutgers does against Maryland today. If Maryland beats Rutgers by 5, then they're not at that level yet. You know, Rutgers can hang with any ACC team depending on the day, but I always like to say if a team played the other team 10 times, what happens? If Army and Syracuse played 10 times this season, Syracuse wins at least 6 out of those 10, maybe 7 out of those 10. Army just happened to win that day. If Syracuse plays Virginia 10 times this season, I'm not sure I'd take Syracuse 6 out of those 10, even with the beatdown that they gave Virginia. I think that would almost go 50-50 split. So I think the top of the big hangs with the top of the ACC on depending on the day, absolutely. But the ACC has depth all the way down, whereas the Big Ten, you get outside of Rutgers and Maryland, now you're starting to run into teams with problems. Penn State, no one wants to play these teams. Penn State, Ohio State, Hopkins, any of them can beat you depending on the day. But I'm just saying the quality and the consistency with which they play once you get out of Maryland and Rutgers is way downhill after that. Let's see here. Who's next? Wendell, the songwriter. UNC should have cleaned UVA's clock. Surprised it was so close. UVA not clicking. And I disagree with that one, Wendell. I don't often disagree with Wendell, partly because he cuts some mean hair, but also partly because he's got a lot of good takes here. But Wendell, the songwriter, I would say that Colin Krieg saved UNC's ass in that game. I think UVA played well overall, played good enough to win outside of they didn't finish the rock. They put 3 more goals past Krieg, or if Krieg just plays an average ball game, Virginia wins that game and it looks a lot different. And Virginia wouldn't have necessarily won that game because if Krieg didn't play well and Virginia, it's closer throughout the game, then UNC is going to do other things to adjust. But I don't think UVA played as poorly as it looked initially. I think that you ended up having a goalkeeper standing on his head, preventing UVA early on in that game from doing anything successfully, which, if you're going to succeed in lacrosse, you got to score goals. And they kept him back from doing that. Wendell is pulling for Rutgers, but I agree, Wendell. Maryland is Wendell's pick for that, and I agree. Best team in PA. Lehigh? No. I still think the best team in PA by the end of the year is probably going to be Penn State, but Lehigh's legit. We just got to see what they do in the conference. It's going to stink too, not seeing as much cross-conference play overall, so you can't really see how all these teams line up, but Lehigh's definitely good. If I recall, Lehigh has a really solid face-off guy, and offensively, Lehigh's been as good as anyone the last couple of years. Let's see here. Jesse Bruning, hope they keep... okay, Jesse's just slamming some other people. All right, here we go. Back to the thing. We're done with the questions so far. I'll get back to more as I rip through them. Let me highlight like the last one. Someone's trying to get me to mention Eric Ruback from Bellarmine had 12 ground balls. I don't get excited about 12 ground balls, especially not if you're a face-off guy. If he's not a face-off guy, that's pretty dope stat line though. All right, so let's get on here. Duke rolled High Point. Absolutely massacred High Point. Now, I had figured that Duke could win that game anywhere from 3 goals to 10 goals is what I figured would happen. I did not see a 27-8 absolute shellacking happening, partly just because Coach D doesn't do that. Coach D isn't the kind of coach that runs it up on a team. And some people would look at that and say, even myself, I was even pinging some Duke people saying, hey, was this kind of a statement win? Was this one of those wins where you're like, hey, UNC's beating the ever-living hell out of people, maybe just to show the country that we could do that too if we wanted to? Maybe that was what it was. But when you end up looking at the box score and as you watch the game, that jump out to 16-2 at the half is what I think it was. There was no statement in that. It literally just looked like it was easy for Duke, and High Point was not playing. I dare say it almost appeared like we were watching a team give up, except I don't think Torpy has give up in him, nor do I think that High Point team does. I think what we might have been seeing is just really, really tough schedule fatigue. You end up playing Virginia, you have UNC twice, then you got to go and play Duke all before you even get into the nitty-gritty of your conference schedule. You have no easy games to kind of build your confidence and develop flow. You're just taking on 4 ACC teams already by this point. So I'm thinking High Point was a little bit fatigued mentally. But it didn't look like a statement win. It looked like a game where the other team just at no point had any answer for anything that Duke did, right down into Duke was scoring. As I say it, I know my notes so well, I'm not even going off of them. But the slow burn, okay, Duke had 18 guys score at least a point in this game. Sowers was 4-1. O'Neal had 5 goals. Robertson 3-1. Phil Robertson, Sowers' Princeton roommate, 2-1. Montgomery, 3 assists. J.C. Basile, coming off the bench, anchoring the second team attack, went 2-1 in this game. And like I said, Duke had been playing that second attack line in every game that they got a solid lead. Mercer, that second attack line got 4 minutes in the first quarter. So they've been getting these guys a lot of time, and it is proven that it's paid dividends because the depth never stopped, and even the bench guys for High Point couldn't do anything against Duke. I think there may have been a little bit of laying down, frustration, things like that by the end of it, but we talk about the Duke offense in this one, and the Duke offense did play incredible. Let me get a drink. The Duke offense did play incredible, but what should scare people more was the Duke defense. They're now clicking as much as the offense is, anchored by JT Giles-Harris. He had 3 caused turnovers and 2 GBs. Brower, I believe, was the one that guarded Nolting, and I think he did a really good job. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Brower that guarded Nolting, and he did well, hampered Nolting all game long. Let's see here. But yeah, they're just playing really good. I mean, JT even had where JT's doing a lot of standing in the middle, anchoring the defense. He had one really nice play where High Point was trying to pass the ball down that right alley, and he just picked it out of the sky and took off the other way. Adler's playing tough. He has 8 saves, and his numbers have been solid over the last couple of weeks. So just as we talk about the Duke offense is starting to get better and they're starting to gel, the Duke defense is doing the exact same thing, and this is really now, I think we're starting to see Duke look like what we expected them to look like in the early season. But a bunch of new moving pieces, a couple other guys that have joined the squad now. UNC just got everybody back. Duke got everybody back, but added some new pieces that they had to figure out how they worked in, and holy hell are they clicking right now. I'm going to talk about this one here before we get into the questions again. Rutgers at Maryland. This is the big game of the day, and in my notes you can't see it, but I was really sly, and it's got the big 1G. So this is the big game of the day. Logan Wisnauskas 8-10, Bernhardt for Maryland 10-7, and Daniel Maltz 12-4. We've got these 3 big cats for Maryland going up against Adam Charlambides, 12-7, Connor Kirst, 11-5, Kieran Mullins, 5-9. So we've got kind of 2 really tough attack units, really good offensive players. Both of them have depth and offensive guys that can score beyond that. But I think they're all going to be keys, obviously, because they, both teams want those guys to have big games. But I think one of the big keys for Maryland in this one is trying to neutralize whoever Nick Grill guards. Nick Grill has been one of the best defensemen in the country for the Terps so far. 8 caused turnovers, 14 GBs out of Grill so far over 3 games. He's playing like a first-team All-American. So does Rutgers have a Nick Grill? I don't think so. But where Rutgers, maybe you give the edge to Maryland's defense a little bit, I give the edge definitely to Rutgers goalie, Colin Kirst. He has played incredible for Rutgers. 63% so far in the cage, 44 saves versus just 29 goals against, and he's faced a slightly tougher schedule so far than what Maryland has faced as well. So Kirst has been incredible in goal. He's going to factor heavily. So it's like, all right, I think I like Maryland's close D better. I like Maryland's short stick D mids better. I even like Maryland's face-off unit just a touch better, but the way Kirst has played in cage compared to the way McNaney has played in cage for Maryland, night and day difference. Kirst is going to be a difference maker in this one. I didn't predict the other one. Oh, no, this is the first one I got to predict. So my prediction in this one, Maryland by 2. I think it's going to be a great game. I think we're going to see a lot of back and forth. I don't think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I think if the over, I don't know what the over and under was set by the Lax Vegas lines, but I would take the over, I think, in this one, although they probably have a pretty solid line on it. So I think Maryland's going to win this, but I think it's going to be a hell of a ball game. And if Rutgers does win it, I think you're going to see that it's because Kirst in cage put up 70% on the day or something like that. So that's going to be key. Next one. Let's do some questions here. Weird. So just to say to all you guys, we got some weirdness in the comments here. Michael Gallipo, he put up a comment, said super nervous about COVID after it hit our football and hoops teams, and they hid that comment, and I have to click to show it, which is stupid. It's like, come on, YouTube, just let us say what the hell we want in comments, and don't try to hold things back because of COVID. That's absolutely moronic. All right, I've lost my point here. Wendell, we're just going to pick up with Wendell here. Oh, okay. We'll start with Wyatt. Wyatt Raised by Wolves says, great point about Coach D running up the score. It's out of character. And like I said, I don't think he ran the score up. I think it was just one of those deals where you remember we saw that game where that team scored like 50 on somebody. It was like a D2 game or a D3, maybe even been club, but one team absolutely demolished the other team, and everyone was all pissed off about it. What people didn't know was that was a statement. In that game, the other team gave up. So the team that was scoring all the goals said, all right, if you're going to be a-holes and not even try anymore, we're just going to keep lighting the lamp. It was one of those deals where you either give up to call the game or let's just embarrass these jerks, because that's kind of what it went down with. It wasn't that in this Duke game. What I think happened in this Duke game was just High Point's tired, High Point's out of their element. Duke is loaded all the way down the roster, and when you're already getting beat down, your starters are getting beat down by Duke starters, and then your starters are having a hard time against Duke's second squad, and then you start trying to get guys in too. That stuff can snowball really quickly. So, and when you watch the game, it didn't look as dirty as what some people said it was. I don't think it was to make a point. I think it was just sadly the way that game ended up going. Wendell took 2 years ago. High Point beat him in Durham, and that's an embarrassment. So I'm not surprised Coach D came back and ran it up, even though High Point are my boys. Yeah, I like seeing High Point do well. I just like seeing Richmond do well. High Point, I like the SoCon over well for some reason. Murray Ron, who do you see as a legitimate dark horse from outside the Big Ten and ACC come tournament time, given play today? All right. So far, if you're not in the ACC or the Big Ten, I think that the teams that I'd be the most worried about or have the best shot at advancing deep into the tournament would be Denver. And yes, Denver already got shellacked by UNC. I think if they played them again tomorrow, the outcome would be different. And I think Georgetown has a chance. David Sowers made a good point in last weekend's live stream that Georgetown doesn't play anybody. Georgetown has all of the pieces of the puzzle that you would want to put out a really good product and to win games, but their problem is they are not going to get tested at all during the regular season outside of playing Denver twice, and that was like their two marquee games. Like then you end up with like Villanova and Marquette. So it's not like they play total scrubs, but they are in no way being tested the same way that the ACC teams are, the Big Ten teams are, even Denver, because Denver's played a really tough non-conference schedule. But I like those two teams the most, I'd say. And then beyond that, you know, out of the America East, you got Albany, Stony Brook, Vermont, all look solid. Out of the let's see here. What other conferences do I do even have a shot? No one out of the NEC. SoCon-wise, Richmond, High Point, but they've kind of already proven they can't hang with the ACC squads either. So I don't know. I think that's it. I think between the ACC and the Big, they've got the teams that are going to be in the Final Four, and the only other teams that have a shot at getting that far are going to end up being Georgetown and Denver. I think that if you had to pick a Final Four, I think you're going with three of those teams almost for sure are going to be from the Big Ten or the ACC, and if one of them isn't, I think the only shot is Georgetown or Denver. That's my hot take. Yes. O'Neal for Michael Gallipo. O'Neal scored a hat trick in 25 seconds. One of the most incredible things I've seen. O'Neal has looked good so far. I hear a lot of people trying to say, who's the freshman of the year? Is it Schellenberger, O'Neal, Hiltz? Right now, it's O'Neal. Hands down, if you're going to pick an offensive guy, it's O'Neal. Schellenberger is not a true freshman. He's a redshirt freshman, so I don't know how that factors. He is a first-year guy, but we'll see. Hiltz is going to be great. But I think that the difference between, even if the point totals are the same, the difference between Hiltz winning freshman of the year and O'Neal winning freshman of the year is like the difference between why Pat Spencer won the Tewaaraton the year he won it over Ament and Sowers. Pat Spencer brutalized the people that he played against. He made people look silly. Sowers and Ament did as well. But Spencer did it in a more flashy way that year. He did it in a more physical way that year. Loyola had a really good season that year. So I think it ends up going to O'Neal. But the freshman talent that we have this year is incredible. Not only do we have the benefit in the big conferences of having super teams kind of pop up here with all the transfers they picked up, but the freshmen on some of these teams are playing incredible lacrosse as well. So now we get to just continue to enjoy these guys for years to come now. Ty Stevens, thoughts on BU? I know they haven't played anyone. Army lost by 1. Wonder they're stealing with Gray being Are you sour on Sowers being a Dookie and not wearing a Cuse orange? Yes, Ty Stevens. There was a couple of moments where us Cuse fans were hoping Sowers was going to end up picking Syracuse because of the Pat March ties. I don't think that was ever legitimately considered, although I could probably ping somebody and find out. but I don't care. I'm just a Mike Sowers fan. I've gotten to the point now where my fandom for Syracuse is separate from this, even though you hear me harp about Syracuse as well. I think that, please, everybody that's commenting right now, am I fair for the most part? I admit that I'm a Syracuse fanboy. I admit that I am a big part of their team, and without me, they would not have any of the success that they have. That's obvious. Everybody knows this, but I feel like I'm still really fair in not only how I cover the teams that Syracuse plays and loses or beats, but I feel like overall I don't harp on them too much. And I've been able to become a fan of the teams that traditionally I've hated. I mean, for me to enjoy watching a UVA game, for me to even be pulling for UVA to beat North Carolina is absolutely ridiculous, because 10 years ago, I hated these guys. If I could watch Hopkins lose a game just so I could laugh and feel good at their sadness, I would do that. And the same thing would have went for UVA, for Duke, for all of them. But covering lacrosse in this way has kind of changed how I watch lacrosse, how I'm a fan of lacrosse. So anymore, I don't get salty on that. In terms of BU's ceiling, they're a good team. We haven't seen him play enough yet, so I have no idea. I know with Gray, they would have been filthy right now if he was still running around there. I know that I watched BU play Ohio State a couple years ago, and that was when Gray, it might have been after Gray left. I think it was when Gray was still there, and they had a lot of good step-down shooters, a lot of good dodgers offensively. So I don't know what their ceiling is yet, though, simply because I haven't seen them play enough, but it looks like they're going to be a solid team within their conference. Jesse Bruning, best part of being a Big Ten lacrosse fan is the Sunday evening games. Whoever came up with that schedule addition deserves a raise. Yes, I agree. It's been cool. I loved this week was weird. Like, I didn't realize that Cuse was playing at 1. I was going into Friday morning thinking Cuse was playing a 7 o'clock game, and then I was going to get through my full workday and be good. Luckily, I had gotten up at the crack ass of dawn yesterday, so I pretty much had my work done by about end of the first quarter of the Cuse game, so I could kind of enjoy it after that. But that was a weird schedule here. We got UNC and Virginia, or Duke, High Point, UNC, Virginia, and Cuse back-to-back days when there was nothing else to watch. It's going to make my weekend here, or my day today, much easier, because I'm just going to get to watch the Big Ten Conference play all day and run through that. Let's see here. Fun fact, Nick Grill is only 5'8". Beasts come in all sizes. That comes from whatever. That Nick Grill, the pole from Maryland I was just talking about, is only 5'8". I did not know that, actually. It's hard to tell, especially in that angle. You watch those Maryland games and you're watching a bird's eye view, so there is no way to kind of relationally figure out how tall guys are compared to other people. Who is the oldest team this year? Maybe Maryland, UNC? I don't know. I mean, does Robert Morris get it just because they have a 7th-year senior in Perkins? I think Charlem Beatty's at Rutgers is 25. Dordovic is a 22-year-old sophomore eligibility-wise. There's a lot of old teams. We'd have to do some serious crunching of numbers that I don't have time for to figure that part out. Let's see here. Ty Stevens. Who is Nick Grill? Size of the fight and the dog. I like that. Brian Walker. Also, what people have to realize is that if you are a backup and getting playing time, your foot is on the gas getting your opportunity. That, I think he's referencing the Duke game. Yes. When you're a Duke player, and especially because they've gotten time. So they're already comfortable getting out there, getting this mop-up duty time way more than you would normally see when a guy off the bench comes in. So I think that was part of it. That David Sowers in last week's live stream also mentioned the fact that teams that play a lot of guys are going to see a benefit later in the season, especially if COVID hits them. And I think that's kind of what you saw in that Duke game. Duke's been playing these second-string guys, third-string guys all season long, so they get in that high-point game once the starters got a big lead. Forget about it. And let's realize, too, Duke played their second attack in that first half as well. So it wasn't like Duke ran it up to 16-2 and then put the bench in. Duke ran it up to 16-2 while rotating guys off the bench, getting second-line attack guys in. So Duke is just that deep. Wyatt, Raised by Wolves, is not sold on Duke, but you're starting to scare me. Love how high I am. Okay, let me read that again. Wyatt is not sold on Duke. I'm starting to scare him. He loves how high I am on Georgetown. Looking forward to see them play more. I'm looking forward to seeing them play against Denver on Tuesday, I think is when that game hits. So that's going to tell us a lot about Georgetown. Tell us a lot about Georgetown, and it'll tell us a lot about Denver, actually. Jim Harris, we often talk about, attack, but the defense makes a team. Which team has the best 3 defenders? Right now, I don't know about the best 3 defenders, but I think right now, at least in terms of the way the defense is performing, Georgetown. And Georgetown has been playing without two of their starting defenders, or at least without one of them. Gibson Smith, I think, is one of the best defenders in the country. And I think overall, just the way that you don't hold decent teams to one goal without having just a brutally talented defense across the board. So I would give the nod to Georgetown. And my daughter is saying hello to me in the comments. So hello, Olive. All right, done with the questions. Keep them coming. I want to see people chirp me about how fair you think I am as it pertains to my Cuse fandom and how I cover everybody else. I've always been curious. I know for the most part people have given me credit for being fair, but I don't want to get caught in a myopia thinking I'm more fair than I am if I could be better. Penn State at Hopkins. That's another one I'll watch. I know a lot of you guys are all going to watch. Both teams are 1-2. Both teams have struggled to find offensive rhythm. Both teams have very capable but struggling goaltenders as well. Kobe Kneiss, at one point I picked him as my preseason goalie of the year in 2019 or 2020, and he has not really progressed since then. Either that or his defenses have just gotten worse since then. But both of those goalies have had miserable weeks. Both of them, I think, played very poorly last week as well. I think Penn State's closer to having their offensive issues sorted out. TJ Malone and Dylan Folds both looked really good last week. They're going to be keys this week. Notice my two biggest keys for Penn State are rarely going to include O'Keefe, because if Folds and Malone can't generate offense for Penn State, it is going to be a long season for them playing in the Big, and it'll be a long season for O'Keefe. If they can't figure it out, O'Keefe might not break that record that he only needed 20 goals to break. I mean, that's how bad it was looking early on for Penn State. But I have faith in both Malone and Folds, and they looked a lot better last week in terms of not trying to feed the beast too much and getting to the rack and creating for themselves. And if those two guys and some others can create for themselves, that will open stuff up for O'Keefe down the road. Connor DeSimone, Joey Epstein, and the rest of the Hopkins offense, they need to figure something out. They have not been consistent at all. They're not getting anything from the depth of their roster. So they need to do more, and they need to be more consistent. Epstein just needs to keep getting better and keep getting his feet back under him again. But they look good in the first half against Maryland offensively. I was like, oh, Hopkins is back. And then in the second half against Maryland, they looked terrible again. So my prediction, Penn State has a little bit more figured out. Penn State wins by 3 or 4 at Homewood, which is going to be a sad day for Hopkins fans. But I think you just got to suffer through them figuring these things out. I think that by the end of the season, Hopkins is going to be playing a lot better lacrosse. And then hopefully for you Hopkins fans, that carries into the season after. Vermont at Albany is an American East matchup I'll be watching today. Vermont sits at 2-1, coming off a 17-13 loss to Cuse and a very respectable showing, in my opinion, at the Dome. They also beat down UMass Lowell, but lost their opener to a solid Bryant team. Now, Albany, they're sitting at 2-0. They beat Hartford on the road last weekend and Colgate at home in their opener. Both wins by, fair enough margins. Albany rode Jacob Patterson and Camden Hay to get their first win over Colgate, and then Dahoga Nanakoke and Ron John in their win over Hartford. What I thought was weird in that was that Hay and Patterson both tore it up in their first game against Colgate. Hay had no stat against Hartford in that second game, and Patterson only had an assist. So it was like you had two different groups of guys tearing it up in each of those games, and neither of them crossed over. I know Nanakoke didn't play in the first game, but I don't know what's going on with that. I haven't seen it enough or read enough about it yet to know why that played out that way, why Patterson disappeared in that second game. But I'll figure it out, and I'm going to watch that one today on one of my 50 monitors. I have these are the scratched monitors behind me that my cat screwed up. These are the 2 new monitors, and then I have a monitor here. So I have 5 games that I'm going to be able to watch, and then I got the big screen in there that will put the Maryland game on. Liam Donnelly, he's going to be a huge factor for Albany. I figure it's like if this is going to be a close game, who are going to be the difference makers? Liam Donnelly in cage. I believe, was Donnelly a Utah transfer? I think Donnelly's a Utah transfer, but he's going to be big. He so far has been solid in cage for them because he's going to have to be today because Thomas McConvey, 10 goals, 3 helpers, and Michael McCormick, 10 goals and an assist. JJ Lewandowski, 7-3. Vermont has a bunch of dudes who can score the rock and generate offense. So Albany not being a really great defensive team, that's going to factor for them. And then for Vermont, Tommy Burke again. If he can keep his role going, that's going to spell trouble for Albany because if Albany defensively is just being pressured nonstop, they're going to need Donnelly to stand on his head in this game to keep it. I actually pick Albany by a goal in this one. And I'm regretting that maybe because now I'm sitting here thinking if Vermont wins the lion's share of the faceoffs, and heaven forbid if they win 7 out of every 10 they take, it could end up being a long day for Albany because I don't know that Albany's built defensively well enough to stop Vermont from scoring if they end up with more possessions. But I'm going with Albany because I'm an upstate New York guy, and it would be blasphemous for me to pick Vermont in this one. Hobart, another upstate New York game for me. I'm not trying to pick upstate New York games. I was just trying to pick some conference games that I thought looked good. Hobart at LIU. NEC matchup here. Hobart is 1-0 with their only win against the Mount. LIU 2-1 with a win over Wagner and Sacred Heart. Something to watch is both of these teams have Fogos that are capable of winning draws. Emerson Tyler, 64% so far off 72 draws for him. And Adam Shea for Hobart, 71% off the 21 takes he took in his first game. So that's a face-off battle. This is going to be I like Hobart in this one because I think Hobart offensively is better. But LIU, they've got some guys who put up points as well. Richie La Calandra, he puts points on the board, 9 and 10 over 3 games for LIU. And then Ryan Archer on Hobart's side, 7-point outing in their opener, 4 goals and 3 assists. So I think Hobart wins this one by 3. LIU, and it could end up being more. Hobart could end up rolling them by 10. But LIU so far has surprised me. I thought they'd continue to kind of hang in a basement, and they've gotten out of their mom's basement, and they're playing some decent lacrosse early, sitting at 2-1. The rest of the games, I just wanted to kind of chirp here because I'm sure I'm missing stuff. I missed a couple of big ones last week. So let's see. Hopkins, Penn State, we talked about it. Richmond and VMI. I like Richmond in that one. There's just not a lot of great games that get me excited. I do see Robert Morris at Air Force here. But then I also see Air Force at Utah, so I don't know what the hell's happened with that. I think Loyola's going to beat up on Lafayette at home here today. Hofstra and Towson do battle. That's become a good fight here overall. I like Hofstra in that one. I think Towson is playing much better, obviously, but I think Tierney's going to go for 8 points again today, and Hofstra's probably going to win that one. It's postponed. Crap. I was going to say maybe I need to run down the street if I could get in and go to UMBC at Binghamton, but that game got postponed. So all these other games are postponed. And then Sunday's games, looks like we do have that's going to kick off, Lehigh at Bucknell. That should be a good one. I like Lehigh in that one. Fairfield at UMass. Will UMass actually end up playing a game? I don't know. And then Duke at Jacks. Duke and Jacksonville play tomorrow. That should be a good one. No, it won't. Duke's going to wax Jacksonville. And I know the Sowers family is down there running around Disney World. Michigan, Ohio State, that's also Sunday. That's it. And then Tuesday. We'll talk about Tuesday's game maybe in Sunday in tomorrow's recap. So that's it. Let's finish off here with questions. I've been rambling for 53 damn minutes. That's pretty crazy. YYC Lax guy says you forgot handsome as well as fair. Yes, I am both handsome and fair, as my mother would always say. So I know YYC Lax guy has been watching because I've hyped up my handsomeness for quite a bit. What's Denver? Rafael Segura, he's always in here chirping. Not in a good way. I don't mean in a bad way. He says, what's Denver going to look like once TD is playing? I don't know, man. Stathakis is incredible. There's no world in which TD is going to do better than what Stathakis has already done in terms of his stats, I don't think, especially with the new rules or whatnot and the wing play being involved. So I think Denver's faceoff unit between Stathakis winning draws and the wings playing tough, Denver's already scary in the faceoff at the faceoff dot. I'd almost be worried that bringing in another guy like that could actually hurt the flow a little bit, although it hasn't for Notre Dame. If you pay attention to Notre Dame, where the hell is Notre Dame? Does Notre Dame not play? Notre Dame plays... Oh, that's next week. What the hell is the deal with Notre Dame, folks? Oh, they just don't play. Notre Dame's not playing. They play Marquette on Wednesday, and they don't play again until next weekend. More of the story, Notre Dame with Leonard and Gallagher right now is the best face-off duo in the country, maybe one of the best face-off duos through 3 games that we have ever seen in the history of lacrosse. They are both absolutely murking it at a 70% plus clip. And Stathakis, I don't know what his numbers are offhand, but he's been hanging in the area 65 to 70%, I believe. I could actually tell you. So adding TD is incredible. Right now, though, Denver doesn't need TD Erlin. I can't believe I said that, but they don't. So I don't know what that's going to look like. It's going to be scary, obviously, but let's see here. I am handsome. I just think that's funny. We got to come back to that. Where do you think Army will run where do I think, so from Kid Trunks, where do I think Army will end up when it's all said and done? Army could end up being a Final Four team. I think that their problem is going to end up being depth through their roster. I don't think offensively they're going to be able to hang consistently. Like I said, people get mad, and I had this one douchebag that was player hating the hell out of me because I said that if Syracuse and Army played 10 times, Cuse wins 7, 8 out of those 10. I believe that. I think that what happens is every once in a while, you end up having these anomalies take place, and especially with teams coming into the Dome. As a Syracuse fan, you watch teams come into the Dome, and you see all these teams that are used to playing there come in every year and play their best game. Army, every year they play Syracuse at the Dome, give Syracuse their best look. And I think that Army gave Cuse their best look, and Cuse gave Army a shitty look in that game. So I think the Army is quality throughout, but I think that by the time everything is said and done and these other teams play their schedules, if Army were to play some of the teams they played well earlier in the season, it could go down a lot differently by the end. But I'm a huge fan of Army, and I think that they're going to make the tournament, and I think that they could threaten to make the Final Four. I just think that honestly, Army should have been one of the teams I did mention when asking what teams from other conferences could actually make noise. I think if you're looking at someone coming out of that conference, the Patriot, I think that Army probably has the best chance overall of coming out of there. Loyola is good as well. All right, I'm rambling here. Ty Stevens, fair, wants me to talk about Albany more. I'm a golden pony boy, balance in all things. I don't know, what's a golden pony boy? I don't know what that means. I like it. I mean, especially if you're chirping me, it's even funnier. Let's see. I'm just trying to rip through and make sure I don't leave anyone hanging that asks a good question. I think Hopkins comes out of their stump when Milliman gets his boys in. I agree, Jim Harris. I think Hopkins will eventually figure it out here. Jesse Bruning, why do you think Notre Dame didn't schedule a cupcake this weekend to go along with Marquette and Cleveland next week? They're going to need to pad their resume for a ton within their brutal schedule. Yes and no. I think they're going to need to pad their resume to help with their brutal schedule. If you assume they're going to be the bottom of the ACC, someone's got to be, right? But I think that in theory, the way the ACC schedule pans out, if a team splits in conference and then handles their business non-conference, they make the tournament. I don't see how that. I feel like if every ACC team ends up with a winning record by the end of the season, every ACC team makes a tournament. And if they didn't, it would be a travesty. And I think they're all that good. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Utah is one of my favorite teams to watch. I played against the Fogo guy in high school. The kid was just too good for D2 New Hampshire lacrosse. Yes, Utah has impressed. They're starting to not play as young and dumb, which helped them early in the season, and they're starting to kind of play where you'd think they would. But what time does class meet on Sunday? From Wyatt Raised by Wolves? About 10 a.m. I always try to get that video out at 10 a.m. on Sundays, but sometimes I, get a little bit late in the morning. I got kids here and play around in the morning and stuff. So yeah, 10 a.m. should be out by then. And that's it, guys. That's it. I've been rambling now since 10:58. And do we have games that start at 11 today? I believe we may. No. All right. So I got to wait till noon. So now I'm going to go eat lunch, and then I'm going to turn on the TV and I'm going to watch lacrosse for the rest of the day. Probably I will start with, maybe we do have an 11 o'clock game. No, we don't still. But I'm going to get that LIU Hobart game on. I'm going to watch Penn State and Hopkins early. And I am also going to watch Albany today. I'm going to watch Maryland today. I'm going to watch Air Force play 2 different teams today, apparently, is what's happening here. I've seen The Outsiders. Okay, Ty Stevens. I knew the Pony Boy reference somewhere, but I kind of forgot. But I'm back. I'm culturally hip. I do know what The Outsiders is. So, all right, guys. I have rambled now in an embarrassingly long amount of time. So I'm going to let you guys roll. As always, thank you for watching. Go to LaxFactor.com. Get yourself some crap. Support the cause here. And that is it. Hoost is out. The LaxFactor Podcast.